Hello, hello. Welcome back to Unapologetically Wild with me, Kadi Sonntag. I am so excited about today, and I'm going to share something with you that I think as women, we don't understand how important it is or the power we have when we share our story. And this is so important because storytelling to me is the foundation of connection. It gives people permission to live a certain way. It allows you to actually share your experiences that you might think are just everyday life experiences. But to somebody else, that is a permission piece. That is a connection. That is relatable. And they might feel seen, heard, or supported, or all of these things by you telling your story. So I want to talk about how your story is powerful. And the reason this has come up and it's so big for me right now is because yesterday I had the incredible opportunity to be a paid speaker at a corporate event for International Women's Day at GHD. And this was amazing. I was the only speaker, and I didn't know that until I got there. But it was such a privilege to share my story to help others. And I remember when I first got asked to do this, and I was, in conference with the lady who was booking and talking about it, and she wanted to talk about their theme, which was give to gain. And I had to really sit and think about that. Like, what does that mean? And it's like, giving opportunities, and then what do they gain from that? Giving women a spot in the room, maybe in a meeting, maybe they pull them onto a project. And being an engineering company, I had to sort of like shift my focus, right? Because it's not really about me knowing what it is that they need to do, but it's about giving them stories and showing them how that has been in my life, how I've been given opportunities, how I've given opportunities, and how that actually increased the capability of the Defence Force, being my experience, instead of what people normally think. It's like when you give something, it's a special treatment. It's the, we're doing it because we have to sort of vibe, right? Especially when it comes to women. And I feel if you're in a male-dominated industry, you will completely resonate with this, that a lot of the time when we're given opportunities as women, it's more because they're filling a quota, right? Or they have to, or, all of these things. Unfortunately, a lot of the time it's framed that way. And there's probably other minority groups that also have that, who feel that way too. I can't speak to any of those. But in this case, it's really big. And as we had International Women's Day on Sunday, technically, but this was their International Women's Day event for their Newcastle office. And one, such a privilege to be able to speak on International Women's Day. In general, anyone's event for that day, to be able to talk about how powerful and strong and incredible we are, but also to acknowledge how much we don't share our stories. And what it made me realize when I was sitting down to write this speech, right? I had 20 minutes and I ended up telling three pivotal stories for me in a leadership setting from my time in the army. And it was so interesting to watch how I thought about, the things of like framing the story so that there's a message behind each story, right? Because that's important. You need to know why you're telling the story. And so as I'm telling these stories and understanding them and reliving them, I realized I was actually scared to share some of them. One in particular, which was my first story, And it was about when I was posted as an administration clerk to a special forces unit. And they had this incredible day where we got to have the AIS athletes come, and they wanted to do a resilience day. So they wanted to work on leadership, communication, all these skills, teamwork through doing military tasks. Now, most of these AIS athletes also were in sports that they did alone. Like, they weren't in team sports, they were in the individual sports. So super important for them to learn other skills, right? And so it was an incredible thing that they were bringing in, and the big, draw card was that they were going to get a special forces operator as their mentor throughout the day to guide them through each activity, and it was going to be amazing, right? Absolutely incredible. And the operators that I worked alongside, who were coordinating the event, came up to me and they said, Kadi, you're going to be one of the mentors. And I honestly started laughing and thought they were joking and was very, very confused, right? Because the whole point of this was so they got a special forces mentor. This, it's a big thing, right? And those who are in the military, there's kind of a tiered system without being a tiered system, right? There's they, of course, do things that I would never dream of and don't ever want to do. So they're seen as, I would say, they're special forces. I feel like they don't even need to explain that, but they're like the highest tier. And then sort of you go sort of down, and any sort of like my job in administration, if you were in that field, I would probably be our jobs, like one of the less, not desirable, well, maybe for some people, but also the lesser jobs. And in the pay structure, we're the lowest pay grade, which I find very interesting. And so in the grand scheme of things, we're also just seen as the people that, do the admin and whatever, right? And I think that's in most corporations. I don't think administration is seen very highly, because it's sort of like it's almost the logistics and the back end that keeps everything together and kind of expected. And being in business, oh my gosh, is that something that I sometimes wish people would do? Because it's the stuff that actually is quite grueling, and it's a lot, right? It's very monotonous and very, there's a lot to it. Anyway, bless those admin clerks. I had so much more respect as I was doing the job, and then when I left it, I would literally just almost hug every admin clerk I saw, because I was like, I'm so sorry for causing you stress. Every time I put in an application. Anyway, the appreciation was real. And so I was in that role. So, when you think about it in the way it's been put forward, what can I bring to that role? It's kind of where my mind went. And then they said, don't worry, trust us. Now, I'd worked alongside these men for a while, so I did trust them. Although I felt very uncomfortable. I remember we got there and I met my group. And the first thing I said, of course, right, because this is what we do as women, I was like, I'm not a special forces mentor, just so you, special forces operator, just so you know, almost like I'm apologizing before I even start. And they were like, okay, super confused. They got it, but didn't really get it. Anyway, they were like, okay, cool. Whatever. We'll just go with the flow. All the other mentors didn't speak to me, of course, because, they were like, what is that girl doing here? Why is she here? There were so many questions. Anyway, we did our first activity and I really fucked it up. I actually misinterpreted what had been said and sent my team in the total opposite direction. And I remember when we got into the huddle afterwards for, the post-activity report, and we're sitting there, and the first thing I'm like, all right, before we start this, I'd like to acknowledge that I am sorry and taking responsibility for the fact that I totally misunderstood the task and I gave you total wrong instructions. And that's actually why we failed. So now that we've and took responsibility for it, and now that we talked about that, what else can we work on? Where could we be better, like, or communicate more, or all these other things. But I just want to acknowledge that that's why we lost, because I wanted them to know, one, that you always take responsibility for your actions, especially as a leader. And two, it's totally okay to fuck it up. We're not perfect humans. Humans aren't perfect. So when you actually fuck it up, you can be vulnerable and open about it and admit your mistake. This is one of the things I've always admired in a lot of leaders, is the ability to be vulnerable and admit they fucked up. And, the best thing that came out of that was that everyone then openly shared and was okay to share if they had fucked up, and were openly sharing without ego, without, worrying about if they were going to get it right, without like holding back whatever they wanted to say. And this open communication actually, of course, worked in our favor, because as we went on for the rest of the day, we ended up winning. And I remember sitting there at the end being gobsmacked, because I was like, this is so strange. And I was listening to one of the athletes on stage speaking, because at the end they got to do a thing where they got to share their experience of the day. And honestly, he made me almost cry, which, as we all know, in a military situation, not ideal. And I'm sitting in this chair and I'm like, my eyes are like filled with water, like I'm swelling, right? Swelling with water, trying not to cry. He's looking straight at me. He's talking to me. It was the most beautiful speech of my life. I'm going to cry just thinking about it. And just saying how he was so grateful for me being their mentor and how much he learnt from the day. And it was just honestly like going back to the memory. Have you ever gone back to a memory and you can just feel the intensity of how beautiful it was? Anyway, and one of the operators actually came over to me at that time, placed his hand on my shoulder and said, "This is exactly why we picked you." And it was in that moment that I realized that someone saw me bigger than I saw me. And people I looked up to, right? Like, of course, I was, I'd been in for a little while, but I've been in for like 6 years, maybe a bit longer. But these were like the pinnacle of the Defence Force. And they were also men I had trained with, and they'd let me train them for while I was trying to be a PDI and transfer over to be a physical training instructor, which I did from that unit as well. But it was just wild to feel that feeling. And I didn't want to share that story because I was scared that people were going to not like me, or people would say, "Oh, that's not how it was. Oh, she never got to do that." Those, haters. Let's call them haters, because that's what they are. And sometimes it's liberating to share the story. And you just don't know what impact that's going to create. And standing there yesterday, I faced a lot of fears of telling that story. And I also, I don't know who knows who in that room either, right? Like, I've never met these people in my life, and I'm here to give them a speech and motivate them and drive them and make them laugh, which I was so grateful. My third story definitely did that. And, or my second story, I should say, the middle of my speech, when I talked about a recruit at Kapuka and how he wrote his name on the outside of his boots instead of the inside. If you know, you know. I mean, I relate it to those who aren't in the army. You think like we all have the same boots, same hat, same uniform, right? And, when you're at school, in primary school, and you all have the same hat, and like unless your mum writes your name on the tag, like your name on the inside where that tag is, it says name, then, you're lost because you can't find your hat. Anyway, bless, he wrote it on the outside of his shoe. And they all giggled because I was like, well, not great when you're trying to be camouflage and fit in, and you know what I mean? We all have to look exactly the same and blend into the forest. And it was beautiful to be able to share multiple stories like that from my career. And it was a great reflection for myself, right? Sometimes we don't realize how much we've learned from these stories, or how much we've grown, or what we've actually experienced, and how beautiful those things are. And so I want to share, and this is why, part of why I started my podcast, right? To be able to connect with you, to give you permission to be able to not only tell your story, but whatever it is that you need permission for. And I tell that through these stories. Like, if you've written your name on and let's be honest, everyone in their life has written the name on the outside of their boot, right? Everyone has not got something correct, and then they've had to own it and live it and all the things. And so I think it's beautiful even being there and having the reaction of the laughter and people being so engaged. And I forgot what that was like, because when I was in army, people have to come to things. They have to sit through something, and they don't really always engage, or you don't feel like you've taught them something or given them anything. And it wasn't until later in my career that I actually had people tell me, that I was giving them something and I was helping them with things, and they really liked my perspective and the story that I told. And I realized, like, that's actually so beautiful. I mean, anyone can stand up and give a presentation, but who can evoke emotion and, feel connected to the people in the room? And, it's something that I would definitely work on. I mean, I come back with obviously points that I would like to do with that speech and grow it so much, wanting to be a keynote speaker. But I think it was such a beautiful thing. And they, gave me a beautiful email that straight after, just saying like they felt the energy in the room, and it was so beautiful, and they got all this incredible feedback, and they wanted I videoed the whole thing to get some content. And they wanted the video because some of them wanted to replay it. They really, really loved it. And it was just really beautiful to be in a room sharing my life and being appreciated for it. I mean, this is why you listen to podcasts, right? This is why we connect with movies. This is why we connect with, speakers, and why we go and see people, is so we can feel like some part of our story connects with their story. And I think it's a beautiful gift. I think we get to all experience and be with that in our everyday lives as well. Because here's the thing. We can go and watch and listen to people, and I think that's amazing. I love doing that. But you get to share your life every day, your story with people around you. Maybe you meet new people. Maybe you just talk to your friends about things that are going on, and you just want to share parts of your story. How beautiful is that? How beautiful is it that we get to do that every day? And it's actually really powerful, because I think back to women's circles and the time when women were the gatherers, right? And when we would gather the food, we would then sit together and share not only the task, but stories and the dream time. Like, if you want to go into the beautiful aspects of the Aboriginal culture and the Maori culture, and the sharing and passing down wisdom, which is stories, which is, what they've learned and how they've experienced things and what they can teach people and the next generation, so it can be better or different or whatever they want to do with that. And I think we forget the power of story. We forget the power of being in community to share that story. And to be appreciated for that was insane and so beautiful. And honestly, the most wild day. I bought this most incredible outfit, which I'm obsessed with. Oh, I want to wear it everywhere. And do you know what? Because I was so obsessed with it, I had a woman, as I was walking into the event, well, the space, I was walking along the street and I had this beautiful woman look at me straight in the eyes and was like, "You look absolutely beautiful." And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel so seen." I was like, "Holy moly." I was like, "Thank you so much." I was about to go and give my first keynote speech. I'm a little nervy, as we all get. I don't know about you, but I still get a bit nervous. And she just saw me. And I was like, wow, how often do we do that? Give compliments. So many times I've walked past people and I'm like, "She looks beautiful." Do you think I said it out loud? No. And now I'm like, oh my gosh, we need more of this. We need more compliments. We need more noticing each other in real life, connection, storytelling. We need to understand and be with each other's stories and experiences. And I'm so grateful that I got to share my career and I actually got to see what I had learned from it. Because sometimes that's a beautiful piece of reflection, right? When you're writing a keynote speech, you get to reflect on what you actually got out of it. Not only what they can get out of it, but what did I learn? And I honestly cannot tell you the feeling of what it was like to be there yesterday. I was so overwhelmed with gratitude. I just loved the space. We then did a workshop where they got to, write down their concern, like the things that they wanted from what we had just spoken about, from questions on the wall, and they got, Post-it notes, and then we read them out at the end. And I never felt more like I was doing exactly what I needed to do, but that everything that came before it was crafted almost so my life could be this moment, right? And that's powerful and so fulfilling and such an honor. And to receive such incredible feedback afterwards, I actually there were no words. There were no words. And then, of course, that day got better, right? Because let's be real, I'm the luckiest human ever and all the things happened for me. And I went to Army that night and I gave a PT session and everyone was so grateful and they were so happy. And I ran 2 VFAs and everyone was so thankful. And I honestly have probably not, I'm going to say, allowed myself to feel that much love. And I'm also, very much in the second day of after doing something really big where everything's quite emotional. So I'm just allowing that as much as so I can still speak to you. But when I think into the gratitude and receiving, and I find this is a big thing for me at the moment, is like receiving the gratitude, because there's so many times in my life where I didn't let myself feel it, receive it. And to an extent, when I finished my speech and they all clapped, I didn't fully allow myself to take it in. And that's something I'd love to improve the next time. I then moved to the workshop not quickly. I did give them a bit of chance to clap, but I didn't immerse myself in the gratitude of it. But I did later. That night I sat in it and I almost cried. Actually, definitely some tears came out. But it was just this most beautiful moment, because then I'd also had the gratitude from Army and I was like, wow, I've never felt so needed and wanted and loved in that moment. And I think in a way of because I allow myself to see the beauty of it all now. There was so many times there where in my life I didn't actually love myself enough to see it for me on the inside, let alone to receive it from the outside. Oh, and, if anyone's run events or done something that's like, a speaking gig or whatever, the day after, I don't know about you, but for me, it's a very emotional, intense day, in the most beautiful ways, but it's like you're, coming off a huge adrenaline, like it's been gone, gone, gone. It's like a crash of your nervous system as well. And I allow that. I knew that that would be the case. And I think that's a really big thing to share too. Anyone who runs events, especially like, retreats and all the other things, you need at least that amount of days afterwards to recover. Even massive, when I went to Tony Robbins, I remember I got told to give myself a week after to just rest and recover from the huge amount of energy and motivation, all these things, which is amazing, but your body also needs to come down. And that's actually really normal and important. And I don't know that we honor that as much as women, but it's a really big thing. And to show up on here is a blessing that I had the capacity to do this today, but also, I would like women to know that this is normal and okay. I think that's also a part of the storytelling piece. And that it's so beautiful when you get to tell your story. And this could even be to your children. Sometimes I feel like from my parents, I don't know a lot about their life, And it's nice when you hear something new, or my grandma, or, it's like, wow, you lived that. That's really cool. And that's where I think sometimes we've lost those pieces. I mean, we have great things that happen in our lives, and a lot of us focus on the negative things. And I know this because I've been one of them, and I still do it at times. But it's these big things, positive things that have happened, that if we hold on to it, actually that was a reason why we went through that moment that maybe wasn't as positive, in the grand scheme of things, but it led to that moment that did become positive, Maybe it led to us, allowing ourselves to speak and actually honor our story and use our voice. And I think we get to keep honoring that. And even if it's talking to our friends, sometimes that's the best way we can share, because then in our group, we can all get through whatever we're trying to get through. And I think the more we give, the more we gain. Not only do I love that theme for the speech that I gave the other day in a corporate setting for women, but also I think for us as women, we give a lot, right? In a lot of different ways, so many ways. But I think there's a way that we can tell stories to each other, or maybe to our partners, or maybe to our children. That's a different type of giving. It's not a self-sacrificing giving. It's a self-love giving, because you're sharing something that you went through. You're giving it your own, feelings and thoughts and all these things. And it opens up this beautiful thing for other people to share as well, so that you gain then their connection, their, the permission piece, all of these things, because you gave a little to get to know people. And another beautiful moment that happened to me actually this morning, I went to a new gym and I met this beautiful woman. Actually, we worked in a group of 3. And it was very fun. I love team exercises. If you know me, like if it's a team to get it done, I am on, right? Teamwork has been my thing forever. I've played sport forever, basketball, all these things. So teamwork, as soon as you give me a team, I will give my whole 130% to that team, right? And we were a team of 3, and I'd met this lady. She was really lovely, showed me where the running spots were. And then as I run around the side of the road, and there's like different like markers, like landmarks for where each spot is. And so I was like, she's like, this is a 200, this is a 300. And then we had a third member, this beautiful lady. And honestly, I'm going to tell her story. Probably not from her, obviously not from her perspective, but they had all their children there and they had a creche, but this lady had decided to keep her 2 kids in the pram, which was fun. I mean, but she didn't realize that they normally apparently are amazing and sit there and nothing ever goes wrong. Not that anything went wrong, just to preface that, but they were just a little bit overwhelmed, or maybe, it's how they wanted their mum. It was like just a moment. I can't understand what they wanted because I don't have kids, but to me, they wanted their mum, or they wanted attention, or they wanted something, right? Anyway, she's doing the workout with us. We always had one person resting, which was actually quite handy. And so she's not only managing her children at like the same time through the rest breaks while we're, doing the thing, and she did everything. Like, she participated in everything. She didn't miss a round. She didn't miss a run. She took the kids' stroller on a run with the 2 kids in it. She didn't miss a box jump. She didn't miss, you know what I mean? Like, we all gave the same amount of effort. And she still managed to like console them, talk to them, make sure they were, all good, put them back in the stroller. And one time one of them came out and he's like walking across the floor, and she like was coming up for a box jump. And we were like, oh, be careful. And so she had to like change and then go to another box. And he was just having the best time ever. He was not sad or anything. And he just thought it was great. He got to walk around the gym floor. And it was so beautiful, but it was so interesting at the end. She was like, oh, I'm so sorry about my kids. And I was like, honestly, like, I am impressed with your ability to still do the workout, be with the 3 of it. Like, we would have easily taken it and just finished, done it for it. She did not for a second miss anything. We would have been like, we'll take it. It's fine. We'll run. We'll just make it a 2 session. That's fine if she needed to. But nope, this woman managed to look after her 2 children who needed her throughout the whole workout, still do the workout with us in a 3. And I honestly sat there and was in awe of her, because I was like, she was worried that it was bad that her kids were like that. I was impressed. I was like, at a totally different perspective, not being a mum. I was like, gosh, managing that was impressive. Like, and when we do some of the things, she'd bring the kids over to watch, and I laughed because they would stop crying when they were seeing us in pain. I was like, oh, maybe that's what they need to see us in pain. It's quite funny. She was like, maybe. So, but it's these sorts of things that, like, if you don't experience them with people and talk about them, and afterwards, I was just saying how impressed I was from her, and, it was just a beautiful moment where we could connect about that and the workout and all the things, and we got to talk, and the other ladies then spoke about daycare and things that, obviously I was like, oh, that's fun. Maybe I'll need this later in my life, right? Because here's the thing, when women share, it's actually really beautiful. And they started sharing, and then they realized that like another woman knew someone who could help this woman, and then another woman knew something else. So it's like in the sharing, in the connection, in the, saying what they need, because this is what, as women, we need to start asking for things of like what we need. She asked if anyone knew of any daycare centers that were actually taking kids. And all of a sudden, the network of women had found a daycare center that literally had spaces, all in the space of literally 5 minutes. And I was like, this is the power of telling your story. Now, that might not mean that she's been, she's literally telling the story of the fact that she's been trying to do all these things, and she really wants to get her kid into care, and she thought she was doing really well being a year out. I honestly thought the same, and clearly I've learned that that's not a thing. Apparently you've got to do it 3 years out. You got to do while the baby's in the belly. Who knows? Seems very, very a lot cutthroat, very cutthroat. Anyway, I learned a lot. And so, it's her story that then opened the door to people to help her actually understand. And I think this is the piece, is sometimes we don't tell our story, maybe of fear of judgment, maybe of, all of these things. You could honestly add 1,000 things. Maybe like me, I was scared to share it because I might have haters. Maybe because, you're just really worried about literally like fear of judgment of what people will say, or if people help you, or if what people will think of you, or shame or guilt. To be real, if we don't share our story, we don't actually get to honor the process of what we walked through, and we don't get to actually honor how we can move through it and the ease and grace that having other people and being connected actually gives us. And so it was just a beautiful full circle moment for me today. And I wanted to tell you that your story is powerful. You get to share it in every facet, right? I want to share it on stages to the world, but you may just share it in your everyday life. I also want to share it to my friends. Don't worry, they know too. And there's going to be aspects of your story you might share with some people and other aspects you might not share with others. You know, like you can be discerning in who you share your story with and what parts of your story you share. But know that when you do share, it is powerful. Keeping quiet is not. And you'll actually have more doors open when you start to share your story and when you start to allow yourself to be seen. Because let's be honest, the bottom of all of this is being seen even deeper, no matter what the outcome. That's the hard part. And it doesn't have to be, but it can be for a lot of people. And this is your permission, so share your story. I would love for you to share the power of your story in my comments. I would love for you to share this to someone who needs to talk about their story or share it in a way, in any way. This is your permission to share it. Like I said, you can share it with me, you can share it with others, you can share, with whoever you want. Share it with the world, put it on Instagram. You do you, right? And yeah, I just think it's super powerful. And I want to leave with sort of something that I think is also quite powerful, is that your story is your gift, right? No one has experienced life like you have experienced life. No one has had the same experiences as you. Nobody can share your story for you. Nobody knows your story. Only you do. So this is your thing that you get to honor, that you get to create, that you get to be with, that you get to actually immerse your life in and see from a beautiful, beautiful perspective that it is. So I'd love to leave you with that. I would love for you to share any comments, anything you got out of today's episode, please share below. Please share this with other women and so they can also share their story and honor their gift and just be with how incredible they truly, truly are. So please like, comment, share all of the things. And I would love if you want to also share it on your stories on Instagram or Facebook and tag Unapologetically Wild with Kadi. So that's Instagram, it's on, but it's an Instagram page for this. Please follow my Instagram page. And yeah, I would love for you to actually go on there and share with me, like tag me in anything that this invokes. Maybe if you share anything or if you just want to give a message or a shout out, I would absolutely love that. And I hope you have the most magical, magical day. I hope you share your story with whoever is around you. And I hope you stay unapologetically you and unapologetically wild. I love you all. Bye.